Hello, YouTube! Welcome to the backstory, where we're trying to get the backstory on indie games, give a little light to indie game creation stories, and a behind the scenes look on what it takes to make a game. I am once again joined by co host James.
How's it going?
And today's guest, Bryce. How are you going today?
I'm doing alright, thank you.
Alright, no worries. Today we are looking at Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia. It's obviously fishing motifs, but I believe there's more to this game than just fishing, is that right?
Yeah, I actually feel like I misled a lot of people into thinking that there was quite a bit more than just fishing, but it is mostly just fishing.
I mean, you've made spooky games in the past, so I guess your reputation preceded you.
Yeah, a bit.
Alright, let's get into it, James. Okay, so quite obviously we've got a lot of the people like to call the PS1 aesthetic going on, which I noticed one of your previous games used as well. Is this just a favorite art style of yours?
Yeah, for the time being, that's all of my playing games have more or less this kind of art style.
Was that born out of you don't want to do better? Like, do you not trust your artistic skills? Or if you could do better, you would still choose to do it in this way?
So I actually have a history of doing high fidelity stuff originally. My first released game for money is called Location Withheld, and it's all like attempting to be photoreal and stuff, which is an art style I am a fan of, but it is really exhausting to work with, and aesthetically I just enjoy this kind of stuff more. I got involved with a few communities that are built around this kind of aesthetic, and we all like help each other out with it and stuff, so I don't know, I got my knees deep in it.
Oh, so do you have to have four to cook?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
People were trying to figure out like what recipes would make the best dishes and stuff, but that system was so last minute. It literally just is based on the value of the fish you put in.
So did you really not want to add the cooking side of things?
I thought it was a good idea. I just yeah, so I had like Breath of the Wild's cooking in mind, where I was like there'd be recipes and it'd be like a lot of experimentation and like all these different dishes and stuff, and I'm like there's no way I'd be able to fit that in this game in a reasonable time. So I had to sit down and conceptualize some kind of cooking that would fit with what I already had, and so I was like, okay, I'll have three different dishes and they're just based on a stat that I already have, which is the how much money the fish is worth, and I'll just leave it at that and it'll affect the luck. I also wanted to have dishes like in the theoretical expanded cooking, have dishes that affected different stats, like how fast you run or how tough your line is or whatever.
Okay, well, if there's something you weren't satisfied on, then what made you choose now to release the game?
There's a saying that like a work of art is never complete because there's just always going to be more stuff you want to add and change to it, and at some point you just have to decide that it's done. And that point came eventually after working on it for like 4 or 5 months. I lost the desire to continue working on it at that point, basically. And I figured that it was complete enough, and everyone who I was playtesting with seemed to enjoy it well enough.
Did you ever want to include more to the story of this game? Explain who the kid is, where he's came from, what he's doing?
I'm actually pretty happy with how big everything is. There's a few like thematic things that I wanted to get across in kind of a subtle way, and I'm pretty happy with how I did it. I do think at some point I wanted to do some more stuff with the end of the game, but I opted to just make the ending a lot more abrupt because I was just sick of working on the game at that point. It had been way too long and I wanted to move on. But that being said, I am still pretty happy with the ending.
So it's very subtle, but there is a soundtrack to this game. Did you make this, or where did you get it?
My partner made it actually. She does the music for all my games.
So what's the kind of the process when you talk with your partner about the new game you're working on?
Usually, it's a lot of back and forth because I do not know anything about music theory or how to play an instrument or anything. So I talk almost exclusively in vague descriptions of vibes that I want to hit, and usually I make a playlist of like music that is similar to what I want, or atmospheres that are similar to what I want to achieve. Show that to her, and she's got a lot of similar tastes to me, so usually she gets what I'm putting down and makes something that really works.
What was it like finding the different types of fish? Did you just have to go through an encyclopedia, find a new one, find a new one, find a new one?
Yeah, my process of that was actually just asking a bunch of people I know what their favorite fish are, because I
Okay.
don't know that much about fish. And then I just gathered a list of really cool looking fish and did research on all of them to see, what they look like and where they're located and all that sort of stuff. I did do a little bit of organization. I wanted like more ocean oriented fish to be towards the bottom of the lake, and in the cave I wanted there to be exclusively deep water fish that would absolutely just die if they were actually at this altitude.
I'm gonna empty this pond. It takes me all night.
There's actually an achievement for um, emptying out every fish in every water source without
Oh.
sleeping, because that's how you respawn them. I've actually never tried doing it myself. I mostly did it one time, and it took a while. The thing about making games, though, is once you have worked on a game long enough, you cease to understand how it could possibly ever be fun because you've just played it so much. So you just have to trust people when they tell you that like it's fun or something is a good idea. So when I put that achievement in, I was like, this will probably be pretty fun to do. I don't know. I have no way of knowing.
Has anyone got it?
Yeah, a few people did. I got a lot of complaints about that achievement.
Jesus.
I think
What were the complaints about it?
Nothing too
so
hard.
I think I've read 4 bits of feedback of that achievement, like from people who've gotten it. And 2 of them said that it was a lot of fun and they really loved doing it. And the other 2 said it was a horrible waste of time and it ruined the game for them.
I mean, they could just not do it. So,
Yeah,
That was my mentality. It's something I've learned making games though is that if you put an achievement, people are going to get it, whether it's fun or not. And it was fun for some people, apparently. It seems
well, you
pretty
got like a
divisive.
50-50 positive feedback on it,
Yeah.
right? So, what were some of the things that you did get as feedback when you played the game with other people?
It was mostly a lot of bugs, like I had to squash a lot of bugs. The game is fairly simple, so it was mostly just, oh, I like that it's just a simple fishing game, or I don't like that it's a simple fishing game.
Did you ever want to add more, or has the idea to keep it simple ever held you back?
Yeah, there was a bit of a internal conflict there because at a certain point, since I did just want this to be a simple jam game that I could make in like a month, but then it just kind of ballooned out of control. Even though the game stayed relatively simple, it just took me a while to make it, longer than I thought. I wanted to add more, but at the same time, I was getting really exhausted working on it, so I just had to like hold myself back and not increase the scope at all, and just tell myself to include it in a sequel if I ever make one. You used to be able to beat this game within 5 seconds. Basically, it was insane. Because of this horrible bug I had. Um, Actually, I think technically the bug is still there, but I just put big invisible walls around the whole map, so you can't do it anymore. But you'd throw your lure down and then pull it and bounce it off of a rock, so it would go flying out of the map, and then you could just pull it into the trigger zone that ended the game early. That's like under the map. Um, and it was so easy that a couple people did it on accident and like spoiled the ending for themselves. So I had to fix it.
It's funny.
The design for like the lake and the surrounds, the countryside, did you draw inspiration from any real world location?
Yeah, actually, I looked at a lot of pictures of lakes in Alaska. I don't remember the names of the lakes, but that was my main inspiration. Um, for as far as real world stuff goes. Other than that, I looked at the fishing holes in Ocarina of Time and looked a little bit at the Dreamcast fishing games as well.
And what was one of the more surprising things you learned from that?
Honestly, the stuff that I found surprising is really boring. I just for some reason didn't conceptualize how many like rocks and branches and tree trunks would be surrounding the lake. And I just ended up having the one tree model that I kind of sprinkled in a few areas. I often have a hard time adding more granular details to larger maps like this.
Okay, so what drew you to start this project over, any other project?
The original idea for this project actually was a game where you maneuver a submarine in the at like the bottom of an ocean and slowly
Mm,
discover like mutated fish around a crashed like UFO. And then it just slowly turned into something completely different. It was originally being made for a jam,
okay,
but it just got too big, and so it didn't end up releasing by the jam deadline.
all right, but you kept working on it in your own time.
Yeah, I put all my focus into it until it was done, pretty much.
What was it like trying to program in the fish's AI? Did
Uh,
you have to examine how fish act in the real world, or you just go off your experience with Zelda-like games?
I actually didn't end up taking a lot of inspiration from anything. I just kind of thought how I would want it to work in the scope of this game, and it was unexpectedly a complete nightmare.
Please
I
go on.
just I just wanted the fish to originally be able to move freely anywhere they want in the lake without being able to go above or beneath a maximum height, since the
The
progression
surface
is
of the
based
water,
on
yeah.
the yeah, and the progression's based on the depth of your lure. So I wanted like the deeper fish to stay towards the bottom, but other than that, to be able to move freely wherever they wanted. But for some reason, that just kept causing them to escape the map, even though it really, really shouldn't have. I put in so many countermeasures to prevent that from happening, but it just kept happening. So after like 3 days of just bashing my head against the wall with it, I decided to give up on that idea and just have them have a fixed starting point, and basically a position is chosen around that starting point for them to swim to, and then like a ray cast is shot from the starting point to check for wall collisions. So they in the final game they end up just staying around a central point and just moving around it basically.
So one of the things we normally talk about on this game is sort of inspirations. What inspirations did you have when you were working on the game?
So the original submarine idea was inspired by a friend of mine's game. He made a small submarine game that's very similar and is in a similar art style as well. But when I started to transition more into the fishing aspect of it, my main inspiration was Ocarina of Time with the sort of landscapes and the fishing mechanics in that game. Probably the biggest inspiration is just fishing mini games and non-fishing games. Um, whether that be Ocarina of Time or like Stardew Valley or Animal Crossing. Um, those are always my favorite part of those games. And anytime I played a standalone fishing game, I really didn't enjoy it, and I just wish that they were more like fishing mini games. So I basically just wanted to make a full experience that just felt like a fishing mini game, mechanically. I don't think I mentioned it yet, but the reason that I got so burnt out working on this game was the amount of fish models I had to make. I just there was like a good like 2 weeks where it was just me like hammering out fish models and textures. They got very tedious.
Would that not be interesting? Because each fish is a different shape.
It was, but everything sort of has its limits at a certain point, and enough of the fish had similar shapes to where I was really just taking the like bass model and then moving a few of the verts around and then making a new texture for it. That was actually a lot of them. I was very excited to finally like work on the weirder fish, like the oarfish or the manta rays.
So this piranha would have been one of the boring ones.
The texture for that piranha was the easiest one to make because I found just a photo of a piranha and I just used that like a taxidermized piranha. I don't know if that's what you'd call it.
Were you not able to take that shortcut with any other fish?
Surprisingly, not really. I thought I would be able to find like public domain photos or just good like side photos of a lot of the fish, but there really isn't a whole lot. So I mostly just resorted to taking just like photo textures of other stuff and then kind of painting on top of them. Like the halibut texture is actually a rug that I just painted on. And I got the tigers for the tiger barb from an actual picture of a tiger.
Nice. So it's obviously difficult to catch these scallops, but did you encounter that with any other fish? Did you ever want to make it easier to land your lure near fish that are further away or deeper?
If a fish outside of things that are stationary, like the scallop, ended up like that, it was most definitely an accident. I think the Uaru are the best example. They just like were not play tested enough because nobody really wanted to catch them. So I didn't get a good idea of how hard they were actually to catch. So I would say that I want to fix it now, like in hindsight, but I probably won't because I don't want to work on this game anymore.
What drew you to making games in the first place?
I've been wanting to make games since I was probably around like 10 years old, I want to say. It's hard to say exactly why. I think it's a lot of small reasons and that make up the big reason that video games just kind of mean a lot to me. You know, they've had a lot of emotional impact on me and my taste. And it's just an art form that I've learned and have been able to express myself through. So I always knew even before that that I wanted to do something that made me happy basically. Like I didn't want to compromise if I could avoid it with my job and do something that just made me miserable. And doing games just kind of worked itself out to be that for me. If I failed with making games, I probably would have moved on to something else like animation, but I just ended up being in a lot of the right places at the right time and learning how to do a lot of this stuff and being involved in communities where we propped each other up enough to live off of it.
Have you ever then regretted falling into game design and wanted to be something else?
Not really. Sometimes I get jealous at the kinds of forms of stories you can tell with other mediums like film, but I've never felt like I'm not fulfilled making games, I guess. It's always been an art form that I'm very happy doing. Except for when I'm really frustrated making fish AI for 3 days in a row.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from that to talk a little bit more about you. You're a game developer by trade? Like that's your job?
Yeah, I played a
Um,
really big hand in the haunted PS1 demo discs, and I take part in a lot of that community stuff.
okay, so you're an artist first.
Oh yeah,
Did you have trouble programming in this game then?
not this one in particular. Well, besides like the fish AI that I mentioned before, it was pretty smooth outside of some like normal bug stuff. I'd like to think that I'm pretty decent at art and pretty decent at programming, but not like super fantastic at either.
But this is your profession, so is that just false modesty then?
I don't know. I'm just surrounded by really talented people, so it might be imposter syndrome, I guess.
Yeah, I've felt that before.
Yeah, that's, those very talented people have felt that playing my stuff before, which really shocked me. And it kind of sometimes you just have to remind yourself that almost everybody does at some point. Just feel like they're not as good as everyone else.
There's been a couple of moments you've been talking about working on this game where and I get the sense that you've just sort of gone, okay, that'll do. Was that a result of the exhaustion you got of working of this game?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never felt that way working on another game, honestly. And it's not because I dislike this game or like dislike the idea I had for it. It was just because I specifically made the game idea kind of small so that I could make it in a short amount of time. And it just ended up taking way longer than I thought it would. So I was just working on it for months after I thought I'd be done with it and was able to move on. So I just had to start cutting corners and stuff like that, you know, just cutting features. I think in big part, or like a big part of that was that I just had the mentality that this would be a jam game, and then it ended up not being. Because I'm working on 3 long-term projects right now, and I've never once felt like, oh man, I gotta cut this or this will do or whatever, because I just have it in my head that I'm just gonna be working on these games until they're done.
So Did you ever think about leaving this game and coming back to it later when you were more refreshed on the concept?
I actually think I did do that. I think I took a month off of it to work on something else. It helped for sure, but it didn't like get rid of the problem. What helped the most was just telling myself that maybe one day I'll make a sequel and put all the stuff I wanted to in it.
So we are going to wrap it up here. Thank you again for coming on. I hope you had a good time, Bryce.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Alrighty. Now, down below, you will see the links to support the game and play it for yourself if you would like to try Mysteries Under Lake Ophelia. If you would like your game to be on the show and you're a developer, we have a Google form below. Finally, if you like the channel, subs, likes, and comments are always appreciated. And we also have a Discord group open to anybody. Until then, we'll catch you in the next episode.
First try.
Well, in editing, it will look like that.